Nobody trusts anybody now.
Then I'll have to kill you, Charles. You see, when a man bleeds, I know I'm human. He'll try and survive.
Much has already been said about John Carpenter's 1982 body horror masterpiece, The Thing. How it initially received terrible reviews, only to later become a cult classic and one of the most widely appreciated horror movies of all time.
The audiences went and hated it, and years later, everybody's going ooh and ah, but that's the way it goes.
The question, though, is how? Why did its perception change so drastically while the film itself remained the same? Of course, people often credit the film's now iconic practical effects, its intricate cast of characters, or its heavily debated final scene, each of which deserving its own round of applause. But what about what captures all of that? What about the one element that influences every shot, every frame, every pixel? What about The Thing's cinematography? This is Dean Cundey, the cinematographer for The Thing. He and John Carpenter have worked together on several films, initially starting out small, but after the outrageous success of their first collaboration, Halloween, which made over 200 times what it cost to produce it, the pair advanced from the much smaller indie budgets to those more akin to a blockbuster, allowing for a far more ambitious approach to their following films. As their catalog of collaborations grew, so did their budgets, going from $300,000 for Halloween, which went on to earn $70 million, to $1.1 million for The Fog, which went on to earn $21.1 million, and then to $6 million for Escape from New York, which went on to earn $50 million. However, while each of his previous films earned a large profit, his next film, The Thing, despite having Carpenter's largest budget yet, $15 million, made less than each of his previous projects, failing to surpass even $20 million at the box office, a flop that redirected John Carpenter's career.
The Thing was not a commercial nor critical success when it was released. I didn't recover from the disaster of that movie for quite a while.
But they were wrong. Despite what audiences may have thought at the time, The Thing is a beautiful film, capturing some of the most captivating visuals horror has to offer, and not by simply relying on grotesque imagery, and it is grotesque, but by implementing clever camera work, composition, and lighting. So let's talk about it. When making a film about a group of men isolated on frozen desert thousands of miles from civilization, where a malevolent alien organism aims to invade their bodies and assimilate them, where the question of identity isn't solved by appearance or by communication, the director needs a strong sense of visuals, allowing both the cameras as well as what it captures to not only support those ideas, but become them. And in The Thing, Cundey and Carpenter did just that. The Thing has a wide aspect ratio, making use of anamorphic lenses to accomplish a few of the goals Cundey and Carpenter laid out for the film.
It was, again, a very visual film.
You see, Cundey had wanted to shoot some of his previous projects on wider lenses like he eventually does in The Thing, but failed to convince those directors of the visual advantages they could offer.
Struggled sometimes to try to get directors on previous films to do storytelling shot, dolly shots and things.
Carpenter, though, saw his vision, deciding to shoot the film in ways that maximize the wider lens, capturing scenes with a broader scope, such as the sweeping landscapes of the film's version of Antarctica, which they actually shot in Canada. Throughout the film, we also get these wide, establishing shots of the research station, each successive one not only revealing how much time has passed, but also how the environment has changed, how the events since the last shot have transformed the surrounding area, slowly becoming darker and more damaged. However, the wider aspect ratio does present potential problems. You see, since the human face is more narrow, using a wider frame makes it harder to shoot tight close-ups without creating a bunch of unwanted emptiness. The Thing, though, redirects this potential drawback by using negative space, capturing a prominent subject but leaving much of the frame empty, which creates this feeling of expectation, like something will fill that empty space. Many of these shots feature a man in the foreground with empty space behind him, one of several visuals that subtly influence the audience's unease, just waiting for something to happen without even a single word. The empty space makes the frame feel unbalanced, and the film repeatedly plays with this feeling, sometimes balancing the shot and sometimes not, leaving us unsure of whether something will pop in. If we can't trust all of them, we can't trust any of them.
Trust's a tough thing to come by these days.
Now, while it has plenty of still shots as well, the Thing tends to move the camera, not only with an obvious subject, but sometimes without one, simply moving through the environment without giving the audience something to latch onto. The camera sometimes glides from room to room, or seems to approach a character from a distance just a bit too far to feel objective, but like we must be seeing through the eyes of someone or something. Here, a scene begins with a man standing alone at the door as the camera slowly moves towards him, swaying in a way that seems to match a human's walk, making us think that someone is approaching. With nothing more than a bit of camera movement and a distant subject, the film conjures a potential threat in the mind of the audience. Suspenseful. When it cuts to another perspective though, we see MacReady, which reinforces the connection between this type of camera movement and a character, in this case, one of the remaining humans. So, a bit later, the film calls into question the location of another character, right before presenting a shot with human-like movement similar to the one we just saw. Now associating this movement with unrevealed perspectives, we believe we are seeing through the eyes of the character whose location we didn't know, the camera movement having both answered a question and raised the suspense by repeating the first part of the pattern the film just established. Implementing slightly different techniques, the film can still create the feeling that the camera is alive, but in another way, this time like it's watching the characters, a voyeur. Here, for instance, when we're first introduced to a new setting, the camera is positioned behind a window, focused on two subjects far in front of it. Without even a word, it feels like it's hiding, like we're silently watching them. Simply placing the camera in this position, with the foreground out of focus, it feels voyeuristic, sneaky, establishing a dark tone for this place as soon as the scene begins. The compositions don't end there though. The film repeatedly deploys split diopter shots to keep both the foreground and background in focus, creating a close-up and a wide shot at the same time, and providing a visual point of contrast between two subjects. Here, with no additional context, simply by examining a single frame, you can probably make inferences about the situation just by analyzing its composition. With how big the hand is, a close-up, it feels important, the film communicating that we should pay attention to it, creating tension by juxtaposing it against the other characters in the background, who also seem important since they too stay in focus. Without a single word, the film establishes the basic dynamics of the scene, the goals each character has, and how they relate to one another. Despite having so many important characters, the film doesn't allow any of them to become sidelined. They all feel necessary, largely because of the way Carpenter frames them, oftentimes treating them as a group, repeatedly deploying these wide shots that clearly present several characters at a time without giving any one man priority over the others, leaving each one feeling as unremarkable as the man next to him. We see the entire lineup, but that only makes it feel crowded, claustrophobic, even more likely that someone on screen isn't who they seem. They're simply hiding in plain sight. Sometimes though, the camera is closer, but moves from one face to the next, like it's inspecting a lineup of suspects, asking the audience to evaluate their expressions, to check for a twitch, a weird glare, any sign that this man may not be a human, but a thing. The camera movement can also reveal items. Here, as it follows the two men, the camera moves backwards, inconspicuously introducing a new item into the frame, but due to the dark lighting, it seems to suddenly appear when they shine a light on it, making the reveal of this mysterious sign of danger even more surprising. All of a sudden, the area goes from simply damaged to dangerous. What I think about most of all, though, is the color. In the cold of Antarctica, the Thing has striking contrast, pairing the icy blue of the environment with the warm red of the props, the lights, the fires, and the creature itself. And that combination becomes even more apparent as the film wears on, presenting monochromatic scenes of either red or blue, as well as ones that contrast the colors directly, having them on screen at the same time. The film also creates these beautiful gradients that gradually fade from brightness into darkness by using strong singular sources of light. I mean, it's hypnotizing. But even with everything I said about the camera work and the aspect ratio and the composition, at the end of the day, it's just a damn good looking movie. Thanks for watching.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!